Yo, everybody. What's going on? Welcome to episode 61 of Climbing the Ladder. I'm your host, ChanmanV. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing that great, crazy event we had over the weekend, MLG Anaheim, and talking about a few things regarding just team strategies within tournaments and also eSports gambling to kind of finish things off. But we really want to find out what you guys think of all these things too. So be sure to post any of your questions and all that good stuff in the Reddit chat or Reddit thread as we're going. But joining me today and every single week, I have John Clark and Richard Lewis, my two buddies, CCTO buddies.
We've been upgraded from co-hosts, John. Fuck.
Nice.
Whoa.
What was that?
Was that me?
I'm not sure. No, but today we have the pleasure of welcoming on our guest who has recently had to endure the physical trials of the treacherous Disneyland. He's none other than the Chief Operating Officer and co-owner of compLextiy Gaming, Mr. Jason Das. What's up, Jason?
Not much. How are you guys?
Good. So you make it home okay? Like, you're actually at home now, right?
I am sitting comfortably in my chair. I don't like to get up too much, but
Good deal.
Hurt my back over the weekend. The trials and tribulations of Disneyland, as Chris said.
Man, we're getting old. Those rides are not the same anymore, dude.
No.
Was it on the teacups or what happened?
Yeah, well, it was first the teacups, and then it was Indiana Jones.
Okay.
The shockless Jeep that you ride, that jolts you.
I've never ridden that ride. Oh my gosh.
It's unbearably painful.
Oh, crap. Well, so obviously Jason was at MLG Anaheim because his team was there. But I figured we'd start off the show by talking a little bit about the event, since actually there were a lot of events. This is a pretty crazy eSports weekend with just everything going on. But let's talk about MLG. And we'll start off with just, I guess, how compLextiy did. You guys had a great weekend. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on everything first, or your experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was a phenomenal weekend. League of Legends made it to the finals. It came up a little bit short, so that was disappointing, but they played really well this weekend. And StarCraft 2, QXC had one of his best finishes. He finished top 16, so very good for him. And overall, we're happy with the performances. Nobody really breaking through and winning or anything like that, but it was a good weekend in StarCraft 2. But Call of Duty, man, those guys have... we've been through a couple of roster changes, and we've really gone through some trials and tribulations, but they finally gotten there, and they did it, and I'm really proud of those guys. Couldn't be more proud of them.
Yeah, how about Clayster, man? He was kicking butt at the end.
A monster, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they were phenomenal.
MVP of the tournament, if you guys didn't watch that. But
Hey, speaking of MVP of the tournament, do they actually give out an MVP of the tournament at MLG?
It's kind of
Wouldn't that be cool?
It was...
Yeah, it would be cool. I don't believe they actually do that, though, now.
Especially for the team stuff. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, we used to do that in that little league called Championship Gaming Series that Richard...
Oh, yeah, that one.
That wasn't
Dick Lewis worked for up there.
I know, yeah.
Hey, Chanman.
It was all
hey,
my
Chris.
fault.
Yeah.
It was.
They those in the chat are saying that the volumes on our mics are a little low.
Oh, I can't turn it up anymore. You guys...
Okay, let me try.
You guys are going to have to pump it up. Or I can turn mine down, and everybody just turn up their volume.
Why don't you turn yours way down, Chris? Make everybody happy.
I just whisper. I don't need to talk anyways. I'm just a damn host.
Automatically adjust. Mine's set at max, so...
Yeah,
I think it's better now. It's better now.
It's you, Chris. It's a setting. You've done something.
Well, it was funny. It was perfectly fine when we first started. But then
I never get accused of being quiet. So there you go. Everyone's messaging me now, like saying, "Oh, it's fixed." So all I can hear is your fucking horrible voice. So it's, you fixed it, whatever you did.
We're in great shape.
Exactly. But I have to admit that I didn't really watch too much of Call of Duty coming into MLG. But obviously I kept track of the news and everything. But getting a chance to actually watch it this weekend, it was pretty exciting. Where were you guys fixated the most? I mean, obviously you had teams everywhere, so you had to move around.
I will say the very first Call of Duty match was on Saturday, was scheduled right before the League of Legends match, so I was kind of standing between the two stages, kind of watching both. But most of the time I was fixated on Call of Duty. It's just, FPS is my background, and I like how they use all the different game types in Call of Duty. It keeps things interesting, and it's fun to watch that game. It's a lot of fun.
Man, there's nothing like the emotion those teams express, whether it's pre-game or post-game or during the game. So that's really awesome to see.
And I will say the one place I didn't make it to very often was StarCraft 2, and I think it was because it was kind of relegated back to the corner. It was that was interesting positioning this year or this event for MLG. So not sure if there's anything more to that or not, but that was it was definitely not front and center like League of Legends and Call of Duty were.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That was something that I wanted to bring up, and I heard several people that went there had some comments about it too. I mean, me myself from a viewer, it seemed the same. Just as big. The production felt exactly like all the other MLGs, just really great. But a lot of the folks that were there said it was a lot of fun. It was just fun as MLG Anaheim always is, just with everybody there, and the crowds were great. But they did all mention that it seemed smaller in general than typical. And what do you guys think about that?
Like the event itself seemed smaller?
Or maybe the setup just seemed smaller, or...
I mean, it's definitely something I noticed. I mean, all the going in, they were talking about how it was the largest pre-sales for spectator tickets and the biggest turnout. And I don't know. I had a sneaking suspicion that the room was going to be smaller for some reason, and it really did seem that way. It didn't seem like they took up the entire hall like they usually did, and maybe it's because they laid it out. One thing I'll give them kudos for is that for years they've always kind of put the booths right up the front, so there's just a ton of wasted space and people are just walking right past them. So they moved them into the middle, which is where I really thought they always should have been. So I did like that aspect of the layout because it really forced people to interact with the sponsors and to walk past them and to do stuff in between games with the sponsors instead of just kind of walking past them as they went out the event or walking past them as they went to go sit down and watch a game. But so that I liked a lot. But it did seem overall like it was a smaller layout in the same space as usual.
I see. Yeah, whatever happened to the talk during leading up to Dallas and Dallas itself, where they had they had the crazy layout, right? They had this mock drawing of just how great that Dallas was going to be, and I think that's how it was at Dallas. But they kind of made it sound like it was going to be more like that, just moving forward. Was it anything like that there? Where it was supposed to be different than the normal MLGs, where you literally just have every stage right next to each other, and it was.
Yeah, it definitely was different. I wasn't in Dallas and I didn't see the mock-up, so I can't say if it was the same or not. But the stages were separated. There were things in between each area. I mean, you could even say that they possibly maximized the space better than having everybody kind of crowded in one area. One thing that I will say that in the past you had people sitting in the chairs, and then you had the pictures from last year with the hundreds of people kind of sitting behind the chairs because there was nowhere to sit. Yeah. I didn't see a whole lot of that happening at this event. So either they had more chairs or there weren't as many people watching. Or they were just more evenly dispersed across the games.
Yeah. So what do you think about the roars? Just kind of, just watching StarCraft 2 or watching Call of Duty, I felt like I could hear roars from the other games just during cast, and I thought that was really cool. It's like watching a golf tournament or something.
I mean, there's no doubt that with Call of Duty and League of Legends, people just get hyped up with that. I mean, and yes, the crowds go crazy. I love being in those crowds. It is it's a blast. So yes, they were definitely loud, and I don't, like I said, I didn't make it to StarCraft 2 all that often. I never sat in the stands of StarCraft 2. I would kind of go and watch some of my players from behind the little player area and whatnot. Yeah. But I never sat in the stands, so I don't know how loud the crowd was for that game this time.
I see. Richard, John, what did you guys think of the event?
Well, you asked me if I tuned in, and I actually did tune in a little bit, Chris. I was just giving you shit. I actually pulled up the Call of Duty because my son was home and he was in the room, and he's a huge Call of Duty fan, and I The production value, of course, is better. I mean, I just remember 2 years ago you couldn't even find Call of Duty stuff. Not what we consider mainstream. You could barely find anything, but he thought it was pretty awesome. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I'm an FPS guy too. I'll never be a controller FPS guy, but I thought it was pretty awesome. And I think what makes each event get better when we talk about events and the excitement of them is literally the excitement. I mean, you could throw out some of the matches. Of course, some of that is what creates the excitement, but I agree with Jason and you guys. There's just something about watching the guys playing Call of Duty and just get so excited and pumped up and trash talking. To me, that's kind of what makes an event like that exciting. I tuned in a little bit for the StarCraft 2 stuff. I obviously followed it with Polt and Anawa, and I didn't follow anything for League of Legends. I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't even know they had League of Legends at this event. So I just didn't.
Finger on the pulse, John.
Yeah, I really didn't. I mean, because there was all that talk, but I guess I did.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest too. I didn't watch that much of League of Legends. I caught the last game of TSM and CLG, which was crazy, which was a really good game to catch. But I didn't get a chance to catch it. There's just too much, and that's another thing to bring up too. It's just that, when you're a fan of all three esports, how is it possible to even watch it all if it's all happening at the same time? So, what do you guys think of that? I mean, because when we're talking about other sports, even though the organizations are not overseen by some crazy high sports organization, they seem to have their seasons, not overlapping by much, right? It's usually only two sports, maybe. If you count hockey, then I guess there's kind of three in some places. But for the most part, they have seasons that are not 12 months, so that's one thing, and they just have them kind of just staggered off. So are we going to ever get to a point in esports where we're going to have to do that, or what do you think? Or is it just not possible for fans to just be hardcore fans of multiple ones?
I can't say we're never going to get there, but I mean, there has always been an audience segregation by games, and I think those lines are really starting to blur nowadays. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, the games change out so frequently. There's no guarantee that I'm going to like the next Call of Duty. I mean, there's no guarantee of that. I mean, they're changing an awful lot of it. So maybe I will want to watch more League of Legends or more StarCraft 2 or whatever other game that we haven't even thought of as an esport next year. So I think the games change out too often. So competitive gaming, I don't know that could ever really segregate by game unless we could somehow get consistent on what those games are going to be. And in my 12 years of doing this, that's never happened. So, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
I mean, it's a real shame because, like you say, I think although it's getting better, we still haven't got to a state yet where the fans and the people that are enthusiastic about esports are actually esports enthusiasts. They're either StarCraft enthusiasts or League of Legends enthusiasts or Call of Duty enthusiasts. It's quite rare to meet someone that's enthusiastic about even, say, two titles. And is well informed on both and likes to divide their watching time. Everyone always has a favorite, and that'll probably make up like 80-90% of their engagement with the esports community. Not only that, you'll find you get a lot of almost like negativity, like, oh, you like that game? Okay, well, fuck you, you're a douche. I don't want to follow that game. And it's actually quite divisive and tribal in that
People
sense.
People are snobby about their games.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like, the Dota 2 and the LoL community spend so much time arguing over which game's better and why and who's bigger and what's going to happen when Dota 2 comes out of beta. They haven't actually realized, like, fuck, MOBA just owned esports. And, everyone wants to make a MOBA now. You got this DC thing coming out, and everyone, Smite are still getting to a space. I understand they're going to be announcing a big tournament very soon. So, MOBAs really took over kind of, RTS and FPS titles, which were the staple of esports. But, of course, no one can get on board and say, well, I just like the MOBA genre. There's too much bickering going on. And I think because of that, tournament organizers have to be hyper aware of that tribalism and effectively cater to it. And then, of course, and even the people who make the games are hyper aware of it and cater to it, which is why Riot have those exclusivity contracts that everyone's talked about. Right. Because, if there is going to be tribal warfare, they want their tribe to come out on top, which, makes complete sense. So it is a shame. I mean, we're still really far away from what I'd like to see, which is where other games would support other games by like watching and lending their numbers to a stream. Like, okay, there's no Dota 2 this weekend. Why can't I watch a fucking LoL tournament? Like, what's the harm? Like, what's going to happen? Dota 2 isn't going to vanish if you do it. Maybe you don't like it, cool, but let's look at it from the broader perspective of if you support all esports, the whole of esports will grow, and that helps out the games that you do like. So
yeah, but I think it'll still grow if you're just segmented or fragmented by game. I mean, you're never going to get me to like League of Legends. Sorry. You're just not.
That's cool, man. I get that. Yeah. Definitely personal preference.
But I respect it. It's one of those things, like, I can't stand baseball. I think it's extremely boring, no creativity, but I certainly respect it, and watching them play, especially at high levels. And what was it, that video last year or the year before that? It's all over YouTube, but where one team came back to win, was it Navi or something like that in League of Legends? And I knew nothing about the game really, to be able to pick it up and play it, but that sort of excitement. So for me, when we talk about events and we talk about how exciting they are, for me, it's really all about the emotion, like the competition of it. I could care less that it's League of Legends or StarCraft or Quake or Call of Duty. If you really see good quality competition where people are just battling it out, trash talking, I mean, they're really into it. To me, that's why I love esports in general, overall. But when I'm there to watch a game, like if I go to an MLG game right now or an MLG event right now, I'd probably watch a little StarCraft 2, but I'd probably be stuck watching mostly Call of Duty just because I'm an FPS guy, and that's what interests me more.
I think the worst part at the moment as well is, like, if you're into one particular scene, like, if you're into League of Legends, but you like want to follow StarCraft or vice versa, very hard to follow both at the moment. Because it kind of feels that they're both vying for the same space. It shouldn't be like that at all. They're very different games, and they cater to, I would say, not very different audiences, but certainly different parts of the esports spectrum. And there's no reason why you can't appreciate both. So yeah, it's a shame that it kind of feels almost that at the moment they're vying to be in the top spot, when what I'd like to see more tournament organizers do is, okay, day one League of Legends, day two StarCraft.
I think that's see, that's a good point right there. IPL 5 did that. They did a great job of segregating each day to be a different part of the event, so that everybody could focus on one thing.
I would do it in blocks. I never understood that. I mean, I would do it in blocks. You can still do the same game. You could have 3 games in one day, but do it in blocks. You know, like, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. is, one game. And if you want to tune in, you can watch it. You don't get distracted by the other stuff that's going on.
Yeah. So, Jason, given the numbers that Adam released, in a tweet, where he was saying that, I think at the time it was the max concurrent viewers, or the concurrent viewers at the time was like 120 for LoL, 75K for SC2, and then I think even 65K for Call of Duty. How are you seeing the rankings right now in terms of just the games themselves and the money that each of the games are bringing, and then what do you think the trends are for each one of them right now?
I mean, from an audience standpoint, League of Legends dominates. I mean, there's no competition whatsoever. Call of Duty is really starting to catch up to StarCraft 2, and the numbers are starting to equalize. But one thing I'll give that community in general is there is no more avid and active fan base that interacts with our brand more than that community does. I mean, they're insane. I mean, they just tweet at you and talk to you. I mean, they help trend us worldwide. During the finals. I mean, they're crazy. They're just interactive and they're awesome. So I mean, I love that game, and I love the interaction that game brings to the brand. StarCraft 2, the numbers are still great. They're not growing really that I have seen, but I don't know. WCS, I think the unfortunate way at which they went about it, I think is almost having a counterproductive.
Don't say almost. Don't say almost. It is
having a counterproductive effect on StarCraft in general. And if they continue down this path further, I don't think we'll see StarCraft at MLG next year. I don't think we'll see, and in 2 years, I don't think we'll see. I think it's going to relegate itself back to the way Brood War was. I mean, just a Korean market type of game where, I mean, I'll be honest, the reason why we were slow to get into StarCraft is I've tried every RTS under the planet in my eSports career, and it's just never picked up any steam in the United States of America, and I did not expect this game to be any different. I was wrong about that. But now it almost feels like the publisher is forcing it to go back to that by excluding a lot of people and making it not very inviting for people who are up-and-comers wanting to try to break into the scene. There's really nothing for them to shoot for.
I mean, so we're talking particularly in NA, I think, obviously, just because you're based in NA, and we're all here too, right? And I mean, EU, it's pretty healthy in EU, but it was healthy in EU, I think, to begin with. So
right. And it was healthy. I mean, it's always been healthier in EU than in North America, RTS in general. But nowhere has ever been as healthy as Korea has been in RTS. So, and I was really hopeful that maybe StarCraft 2 could break that mold a bit.
Yeah. So one thing that somebody mentioned to me too, in the standpoint of the comment about StarCraft kind of being over the corner, while League and Call of Duty were kind of just out front and center, was just the talk of maybe the publisher's support for the event, right? And I think a lot of people probably know that Blizzard probably doesn't give MLG as much money as Treyarch and Riot does. Do you think that was a big reason for this too? Is that, or MLG is kind of going towards that direction? Just if you're going to pay me more, of course I'm going to put your games front and center.
Absolutely. I mean, if you walked around the event, you saw Turbines there, and they were marked as a sponsor for their new MOBA. That you saw, what was the other publisher that was there? Sony for PlanetSide 2. And I definitely think there has been a shift in a lot of different aspects in our industry. It used to be, oh, please God, let me use your game, and I'll give it exposure. and, maybe I'll even pay you if I do okay. Now it's like, no, you want my reach, you're going to pay me. And so that's been a very big shift in mentality. And it happened early on with CPL. They tried to do it with Painkiller and with Fear, but, that never works out if you try to shove a game down somebody's throat, and it's the only game you try to shove down their throat. But if you kind of mix these other where the publisher is supporting it with a high dose of money, it might be successful. And I think that's why we might see, potentially some big turnover in the next year or two with MLG, as far as, they only have so much floor space and they can only feature so many games. So let's say 3's the number. I mean, do we think that Turbine or Sony's not trying to get in there to be a eSports?
Yeah, absolutely.
So which game do they drop, or which two games?
Maybe Painkiller will come back.
Maybe it will. Maybe.
Fatalities come back.
Actually, Fatality played. He played in a tournament the other day. He played in like a show match in Painkiller.
It's interesting. It's amazing. He gets paid.
I mean, I think you're always going to get those, like, I mean, it happens all the time. Like our biggest UK LAN, the I Series, run by Multiplay. I mean, they always have, weird tournaments that, probably don't make much of a sense within the broader context of esports. For example, Stalker, if anyone remembers that, that crazy Chernobyl mutant dog game. Then you got fucking, what was the other one recently? Crisis. So these tournaments are always going to spring up from time to time, and that's about game developers realizing, wow, like esports is a real good niche. We can offer them next to nothing and get a very good return on what we actually pump into it. A £3,000 tournament at the UK's biggest LAN, and then whatever profits made on top of that. You look at the sign-ups you get for it, because there's a lot of casual players who are like, right, well, I'm not good at any of the main games, but I might have a chance at this. They all sign up, and to sign up, obviously, you got to have a copy of the game, right? So you got to buy the game and play the game a little bit. You can't just chance it. So there's this is why you see it, so much. I think in MLG's case now, with the situation they've been in, it's definitely linked to their survival. If they want to continue as a business, obviously they're going to have to push these other games, because we can see where they're coming up deficient. Between LCS and WCS, I mean, MLG have been. I mean, that's a DP right there that they weren't expecting. So I got a lot of sympathy for them.
So they announced that the next MLG was going to be in Columbus, and the date is in November, which is 5 months from now. So I was kind of surprised that that would be the next event. And
skipping an event this year. Clearly, they're only doing 3 instead of 4 like they've traditionally done, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then what was funny is a lot of people were obviously tweeting about that and asking, why is there such a big break between each event? And Adam kind of hinted at there being other events in between. So I don't know if those other events are big ones or they're just
like arenas and stuff,
and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have absolutely no inside information on that. I mean, they could also be promotional type of tournaments as well. They could be a turbine tournament or a Planetside 2 event.
Because there's a niche within a niche, right? I mean, there's the niche of the AAAs getting into the MLGs, and then there's a little bit about the thing. What I do and what I did at QuakeCon last year is just reaching out to smaller developers that are just looking to get their game in front of all the other people, or some way kind of sneak into an MLG like a side stage, like a these are all the reject games in a sense, but they're not reject games. They're just games looking to get their name out there and kind of latch on to what esports is. So that's a niche in its own, and maybe that 5 months, I don't want to give MLG any ideas obviously, but maybe in that 5 months, some of these companies they run some events for them, some smaller events.
Right.
Yeah, because to that point, that I made earlier, that maybe we see a bunch of different games at MLG. These tournament companies, they need to walk that fine line, even though they need to be profitable. If they wholesale switch out all their games for a bunch of games that publishers pay them to use, I mean, the thing that they've got right now is a built-in audience that are fans of the game. It's not being we're not trying to buy an audience by just the publisher sinking a bunch of money into a game that we never heard of. That could be. Might be the thing that saves them for a year, but might be the thing that ultimately kills them if they go, too crash with it.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's kind of wrap up MLG, or let's segue into the next thing.
Let's segue
into the whole talk about team strategies within a 1v1 head-to-head tournament. In this particular case, StarCraft 2. And I'll kind of preface it with something that went on during MLG, which was, or just kind of topic of discussion, which was Cats basically forfeiting to Root Kane when they ended up meeting each other in the brackets. I forget which round it was, but Cats ended up forfeiting, and the kind of sequence of events that Cats had an MLG official come over. He asked him if it was okay to forfeit. MLG official said it was okay to forfeit, so he went ahead and did it. And then he kind of gave reason later that the reason being is that he felt like Kane could go further in the tournament, and he thought it would be better for his team to have a better chance at getting a better showing. So, what do you guys think of this? I chimed in that Reddit thread, so I think a lot of people know what I think about it. But I want to hear what you guys have to think about it, and I might play devil's advocate during this conversation.
Well, I mean, I'll wade in first off, because I know everyone's sat in the chat going, Richard hates Root and hates Cats, right? So this is going to be fucking good. What's he going to say? No, it's no secret. I think Cats is an asshole. I think the way Root is. Root is. No. Fuck it. Let's be honest. He thinks the same about me. Give a fuck, right? So the way Root is run, they are run not like a gaming organization in the sense that a compLextiy is, or a Team Dignitas is, or whatever. They're just a bunch of guys, and they're looking to do what they is best for themselves within that collective, and I totally get that, and that's led them to make some decisions that probably seem questionable to people that are all for the professionalization of esports and all of this stuff. This is a naive decision made by them. I don't think they realize that anyone would take it so bad, but people are very sensitive for obvious reasons about match fixing within StarCraft and anything that even vaguely reeks of it. So it's naive, but ultimately, the blame doesn't lie with those guys. I'm going to be the first to come out and say, Cats, as much as I think he's an asshole, he's got a responsibility to do what's best for his organization, his players, and get his players onto a podium by any means necessary within the context of the game. He's gone and asked an MLG referee if it's okay to forfeit, and MLG, in contravention of their own rules, have allowed him to do it. So it's totally MLG's fault, and Root are just doing what would come natural, I think, to most people in that situation.
Jason, what do you think?
Let's first be clear. Cats is really bad. so he would have lost anyways. I'm kidding.
Oh
I love Paulo.
Oh my God.
I was talking to Paulo, but I would never condone this in my own organization. I mean, it's a 1v1 game. It's just Richard's right. I mean, if MLG allowed it, but I would have never allowed my players to say, go even ask. So they're going to play the game. I mean, people are.
But that's the key difference, though,
right.
Jason. What I'm saying, Root aren't thinking like you.
Right.
Like a compLextiy, and I don't think I'm saying anything that's a surprise to anybody. I think they're quite open about exactly what they are.
Right. No, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I personally think the game should have been played. I mean, you've got people. I don't know if it was going to be streamed or what, but if it was going to be streamed, you've got people who paid to see the stream, people who paid for premium or whatever, and the fans lost out. But just play the game. I mean, it's 1v1. If Cats wins, wonderful. He's better than Kane, and he moves on to the event. If he loses, the end result's the same. But play the game. That's
John, what do you think?
I'm with Jason. I'm with both of them because I think they both see it the same way. It's like I think it was an absolute bonehead decision. I think it delegitimizes you as a competitor. He's there to play, and I know we're going to get into more of some of the specifics of how team orders work and how that works. But I think one of the bigger bonehead moves was the admin for MLG saying, "Okay." I mean, the two rules that I keep seeing, and I asked somebody to make sure that, and they actually linked me to the rules. They seem to literally contradict the decision that was made. You cannot. There's one rule that says something like to the effect that you cannot forfeit intentionally for any reason, and then there's another one that says you may request a forfeit. It just there's.
I think the exact.
Okay.
The exact thing is the competitor may not forfeit a game or conspire to manipulate rankings or brackets.
Which in this case, that's exactly what that was, regardless of what anyone says. And I saw people talking about it like, well, they mean group play. And I just go back to the fact that as an organizer myself, if I made the mistake of putting the word bracket in there and I really meant group play, and somebody used that against me because they were playing in a bracket, and they said, but it says bracket right here. And I've had to do this before. As an event organizer, I'd have to look at that and say, you know what? We screwed up. You're right. It says bracket, and this is technically a bracket. So going by strictly what it says right there, that's exactly what it was doing. It was manipulating the results of a bracket. It was choosing an outcome based on a forfeit as opposed to based on playing the match. And I think it's an absolute bonehead move for Cats to do. In my conversations with him before, he's all about competition, and this one just didn't make sense. If it was me and it was my best friend and we were actually on the same team and we were playing against each other, for me at least, as a competitor, as a sports person, I would put everything into it to kick the shit out of him. I'd want to beat him, and I don't care that he could have an opportunity to do better. And I've had that happen before. I used to be a clan leader when we called them clans of 3 different teams. I mean, all the same team, but we had 3 different rosters, and we'd have to compete against each other at times. But never once did I stack my teams or did I tell my guys, hey, let's roll this, let's roll over on this one and just let these guys win because they're obviously going to be better. I just would never do that.
We should bring up the other rule too. Okay, the other rule too also says that the player can request a forfeit, request to forfeit, and then and also request that the opponent doesn't get a forfeit, just in that scenario too. So, and I think that's where I think that's the rule that I think Cats was trying to uphold, right? Which was, hey, I'm just going to ask the MLG official if this is okay.
But we don't even know if that's exactly what he asked him.
All we know is what we know, okay? And again, this is, I don't want to concentrate so much on Cats and Root here. It's more so about just the MLG rules here and what the teams in general, the kind of decisions they should be making, in these tournaments. And the fact that he requested it, for me, like the rules, I think just need to be much more explicit than they are, because
it's common sense, though. I mean, I don't know why we shouldn't have asked. I mean, that's what it boils down to. But I agree, the MLG should shouldn't have granted it. But I want to point out that somebody in comments said it's not really different than how NASCAR works. I was very explicit. This is a 1v1 game. NASCAR, believe it or not, even though they're one person in the car, they are racing as a team, and they do have strategies as a team. So, if one of them wins, great, but they do try to help each other win. So
because there are team points and there are team rewards as well. So it's a different sort of situation.
Very
you can't
different.
use NASCAR.
Right.
I mean, yeah, exactly. When you look at what the competition is ostensibly, it's exactly right. It is a 1v1 tournament, and therefore all kind of loyalties or allegiances outside of that, be it your gaming organization, good buddies, whatever, all of that has to stop once the competition starts for it to be legitimate. And, and there is a place for those kind of strategies. I'm sure we can talk about team leagues or whatever. But when you enter a 1v1 tournament and you're there with teammates, you have to be prepared to play them. You have to be prepared to beat them, because ultimately that is what the spirit of competition is about. And maybe, if Katz doesn't feel comfortable doing that, or he feels that his duties as an owner take precedent over his duties as a competitor, what he should be doing is he should be standing down from professional play and becoming a full-time manager.
Yeah, that's another thing that's worth talking about, is that he's in a unique position, which is he's part owner, he's owner and player, right? And
just before we move on to that, though, Chris, one of the points I wanted to raise, and I hope we can get into this because I think it's very interesting, is the fucking hypocrisy of the StarCraft 2 community at times. It baffles me. Like, I remember in the 2011 GSL Blizzard Cup, I think it was, when Naniwa did that Pro Brush. In what was effectively a meaningless game. There was that in itself didn't influence any outcomes of what was going to happen. And that sparked such a controversy from the community about, like, oh my God, how dare you throw such a prestigious tournament? People have been looking forward to seeing NEST and Naniwa square off against each other, and then you go and do that and the game's over in a minute. And that revoked his Code S placement as a result of that, and everyone said, good, you shouldn't treat shit like that. You should treat every game with earnestness and want to win and blah blah blah. Roots does it, and it's like, oh hey man, I totally understand. It's
not so much true.
Be consistent in your hate, like, at least.
There are plenty of people that call meaningless games. They're like, well, just throw out. Like, you need to change. Like somebody's saying in here, you need to manipulate. Organizers need to figure out a way so that there's no meaningless games. I'm like, well, one, you can't do that. Two, if you try to manipulate it, it changes the legitimacy of the event. But there were people that were on Naniwa's side when he did that, because they thought, well, it's just a meaningless game. It doesn't mean anything. To me, that just shows that we lack a true understanding of competition in sports, because in my opinion, if you're in a tournament, there's no meaningless game. Yeah, true. You're not going to advance. That's fine, but you're still a competitor. And in no way.
It's professionalism.
And I agree. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying a pro brush is an acceptable thing to do. But what I'm saying is, if we look at the proportionate reactions to each, like how there's going to be no long-term punitive measures, like MLG have completely upheld the decision and gone along with it. Katz has said, won't do that again, sorry. And everyone's kind of on board with it. Naniwa actually lost quite a lot for doing that. And he was totally well within his rights. There wasn't even a rule that they could cite to revoke his Code S spot.
Richard, the moral of the story is Johan should have gone and asked for a forfeit instead of doing the Pro Brush.
Yeah, exactly. And then what a terrible precedent that is.
Yeah.
So I just think, like, sometimes I wish the community could be consistent. Like, either we all agree that people should be playing games and playing it within the spirit of competition across the board, and if you don't do that, you're going to be punished for it. Maybe you miss the next tournament. Maybe the person you forfeit for is removed from the tournament. I don't know what the best thing is, but equally, what I do know is there's a massive, wave of hypocrisy coming through when we can hate one guy for losing a game that ultimately means nothing, John's definition notwithstanding, and a guy who's actually conspired to progress someone within his organization further, and allowing him to be refreshed and in a much better condition to play his next game, which isn't fair on the guy he's then got to go on and play.
Okay, so it's different, okay? It's a different situation, Richard, because Naniwa's situation is basically a subset of what happened with Katz. Because Katz has that whole other angle of being a team owner. And you talked about it. Like, he has multiple responsibilities, and one is going to be higher than the other, and in his case, team owner just happens to be a higher priority for him.
But see, I don't even think of those things, Chris.
No,
he was
but
playing
what
a
I'm trying
match.
to what I'm trying to explain is that there is a difference in this situation, and the community looks at it differently in this situation, whether they shouldn't or not. So that's why they're reacting differently to this, and it's not purely just because Nanny won.
It's mostly because of how he explained it too. Had he not explained anything, I think more people would have been upset because he wouldn't have came out and said, "Hey, I'm, kind of almost just appealing to the StarCraft 2 community, like, hey guys, I just want you to know I'm a manager first. I'm an owner. You have to understand this is just what we're doing best for the team. It's good for StarCraft, whatever, blah blah blah."
But, so what I was going to get at is that, we can desire the players to be professional and be players to the utmost extent for the sake of the tournaments and everything, but that's not going to happen, guys, consistently. So I feel like it's up to the tournament to set the rules so they don't allow these type of things. So the Naniwa situation, he was put in that situation because the format of the tournament made it so that there were meaningless games to be played too, right? And when you put those guys in those kind of choices, they're going to make wrong choices sometimes. I mean, that's just how it is. Like, I've kind of come to accept that. So I just feel like it's it's kind of a responsibility of the tournaments to kind of also kind of provide that safeguard so that these kind of things don't happen too, and be super explicit about the rules.
But in their rules they can.
Yeah, I mean, the admins. I mean, look at the admins. I mean, they have to interpret. Okay, the player can request a forfeit. Like, for what reason? There's only one that's stated right here. And
let me give you a quick example. So in 2009, I believe, when I was working with NESL or ESL, we were at Comic-Con, I believe it was Comic-Con for IEM, and we had Quake. And at the time, a lot of the guys, the veterans, were called in and everything. And you always do group play, and then you move on to the brackets. Yeah. And it's very explicit about the rules. One thing that ESL does well, because they've been doing this for 10 years, is running online events, right? And they run them in a lot of different communities, so they always understand you got to have your rules in order. So they're very good. I would say they're very good, but they're definitely much better than most organizations at doing that. And at the event, you can't forfeit a match. You forfeit a match for any other reason except for some sort of emergency, and you're actually penalized by ESL, and you reach a certain number of penalty points, and you're no longer allowed to play. But we had 2 Quake matches that really meant nothing. They, in a sense, they meant nothing in the sense of moving on. So they had to be, they were just group matches. They were last group play matches. And I had one of the admins come up to me and says, "Hey, so-and-so is requesting that he just not play his last match, that he's getting ready to leave." I'm like, "No, he's not. He's not going to not play his last match." He's like, "Well, it doesn't mean anything." So he says he's just had it out. I said, "Well, I grant, they were actually, the money wasn't different. They were going to split the money, so it was exactly the same. The match literally was just a match to be played." And so I pulled the guy aside and I said, "You have to absolutely play this match." He said, "Why would I play this? It doesn't really mean anything." I said, "Because it's legitimate for the event. This is a tournament in which you entered, and we paid for you to be here. You're going to play this match, period. And you're going to do it." And he said, "Well, okay, I understand that. Okay, I'll play, whatever." And I had that same thing happen with the TSM guys at the GESL event. They're just like, "Well, this match is meaningless. Why are we going to play?" And I pulled Reginald aside, and he's difficult to deal with. And I just said, "Listen, you're going to play because it's for the, fans showed up to watch you guys play, and you're going to go out there and you're going to play and you're going to do the best that you can." So, I mean, it is a lot on MLG in this case, but I just am flabbergasted what people would even think to walk away from.
Well, to fix MLG too. I mean, MLG just hasn't, they didn't say much about it, but it affects them because it's funny from a business decision, even for Root, just for a team, as well as for the tournament, like you're missing out on that hour of content, that hour of impressions that you're giving your sponsors too. You're missing a guaranteed 100% you're going to get that hour for something that might not happen in the future by letting somebody.
I hate to say it, but if you look consistently at the history of decisions that have been made within that organization, I don't think those things factor in.
Yeah, I know. It's just
it's more like bros first, and fuck the rest of it. Like we'll pick up teams that do inherently stupid things. We'll try and defend inherently stupid things, and it's just. I don't know. I don't think they think that far into it, which is totally their prerogative. I mean, that's up to them if that's how they want to conduct their business. It's not up to me to tell them how to do it, but certainly within trying to place them within a framework of comparing them to how a real organization would work. I just don't think we can realistically do that.
That's too bad. But the theme is players should play no matter what. There we go.
And I hate that bullshit about splitting the prize money, by the way. Oh, we both made it to the final and we don't want to play the game. Let's just 50-50 the prize money. Like,
that's like petting
shots.
Yeah. That's just...
Yeah.
I mean, I've played in plenty of poker leagues because I run a poker league, and there's been times where it's like 12:30 at night or 12:30 in the morning at the point, and there's a pretty good-sized pot, and you look at each other and you're like, we're pretty even right now, and I don't really want to spend 2 hours playing heads up against you, so let's just chop it. But I think most of the time, for me at least, I look at it and go, nope, I'm going for it all, right? I'm going for everything. But I don't know. That's just me. I guess I just don't understand how people can just walk away from competition, especially if you signed up for it. But
well, all right. Let's move on. Let's talk about... Okay, well, actually, I was going to bring this up earlier, but I forgot to. But there was a tweet that Jason Lake made during this weekend that said, let me show you guys. It says, I like CS. Jason Bass likes CS. Good summer incoming. Pound old school. So, Jason, does that mean anything for compLextiy?
Yeah, I think Jason's son got a hold of his Twitter that day. I don't really know what that was. We're looking at CSGO. We're looking at it. Nothing's been decided or finalized, but we're looking at trying to go back to our roots. That's where we started, and sometime in the next few months, if we can find the right team, right set of players, we might do something. So I don't. Nothing official yet, So.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Next thing we're going to talk about is eSports gambling, and I think we might have discussed this maybe one time in the past, John. I can't even remember, but it's something that comes up here and there just over the years, and the reason I'm bringing it up again is because we had a recent incident in the Dota 2 community where Team Roxas was banned from a tournament because I think one of their players made a $100 bet on, I forget what site it was, one of the gambling sites, and he bet against their team. And they ended up winning $322 after they lost, or he won $322 after they lost. And they denied it, but I mean, the money that was deposited and all this stuff really pointed to the fact that he bet against their team. So they were, I think, disqualified and banned from I think Star Ladder TV, and
it is
yeah, exactly. So it's happened in the past, and esports gambling is, before things like digibets and things like that were being promoted a lot more. I don't know what's going on with like digibets and that sort of thing, but definitely esports gambling is going on right now. And what do you guys think about that? Because sports gambling is obviously a legit industry, and it's pretty analogous to what we can do in esports too in terms of betting. So do you think that that our sport is healthy enough for something like that right now, or no?
I think, right. I mean, like I've done work with companies that want to get into esports betting. I've put dossiers together of odds for competitions. We had a few things running through Heaven Media, which I was glad to be a part of. And I think, absolutely, like, what's the great thing about sports, right? I mean, apart from the sports itself and supporting a team and all of that, it's having a bet, it's having a flutter, right? And the amount of money that sports betting makes is phenomenal, and it adds a whole new dimension. Like, you don't even need to realistically be into the sports, into the team, to be a huge gambling freak. It's like to enjoy sports betting. And I love to place bets on sports I don't even follow that well, but in particular, I do like to bet on things that I know a lot about. So esports betting if we could find it and legitimize it and bring it to the table, would certainly, I think, add that extra dimension of interest for outsiders. I think it adds an extra revenue stream for people that are hosting tournaments, for people who want to follow it. I think it adds that extra level of meaning, that extra level of legitimacy. There's lots of good things it would bring to the table. Unfortunately, right now, esports is a morally redundant, corrupt sewer. So,
somebody remember that.
If you bring esports betting to that environment, people are going to get fucked. And we've seen it plenty of times. StarCraft's already had its big match, fixing scandal. With this Rocks Kiss thing, I find it hilarious. I mean, what does it say about esports in general if someone's willing to throw away reputation and a year ban for $322?
I was just going to say the same thing. Like,
I mean,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's hilarious in its tawdriness. But anyway, the reality is, I just think right now we need a much better infrastructure before we can even think about bringing gambling to the table. And we also need people who understand that gambling isn't legal across the world. There's certain cultures that have taboo. Gambling is taboo. For example, in Korea, that they've got very stringent laws when it comes to gambling. I'm sure we'll get into that soon. I actually know quite a bit about that subject. So I just think we had it now in the current esports climate, it would no doubt be used to make bad people money. And if someone's going to do this for $322, who's to say a tournament organizer wouldn't collude on some sort of scandals to prop up their failing business model? I think we need to be very, very careful before we introduce it.
Jason, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Richard. I mean, I on one hand, I don't see anything wrong with esports gambling. I think it's what makes, like Richard said, sports exciting, and it's a part of human life. Let's be honest. You can choose to gamble. You can choose not to. The acts of some unfortunate people in gambling does not mean gambling is bad. I mean, I've got a box full of Pete Rose baseball cards that'll never be worth anything because he gambled and will never make it to the Hall of Fame because of it. So, it's happened at all levels of sports. There are just corrupt people, and we can't stop that no matter what we do. But it doesn't mean there's something wrong with gambling. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Gambling on esports.
So do you think it's okay now? Like, do you think...
I do. I mean, as long as it's well structured and if we can come up with an organization that can track where the money's going in case there are like incidents, like if MLG somehow rigged the tournament or something like that. It wouldn't be MLG, but some smaller tournament organizer like John, if he propped up his, but yeah, I think as long as it's trackable, I mean, and you can verify the person who's doing the gambling is the person they say they are, then I don't see any issue with it at all.
Okay, John, what do you think?
I'm more inclined to agree with what Richard said. His assessment that and in both of these guys, are saying, hey, gambling is not the problem. I don't think. I mean, it's innate that it's going to happen. In fact, it is happening. We know that, but I just, along with Richard, I just don't think this industry is ready yet for it to be considered legit. I mean, it is legit in the sense that there are websites that you literally legitimately can gamble on events, but the infrastructure of esports is not ready for it to be done in a way that makes me feel comfortable. Like, I'm not going to put money into it, and I also believe that if I had enough money, I could sway. It only takes $322 and I get a whole Dota team to roll over, So I just think that right there is an example of why this industry just is not quite ready for it. And I know there's a huge proponents of it, and I'm not against gambling. I think that people that think that when we're talking like this that we're somehow against gambling, that's just not the case. I'm just against it happening at this point in esports.
I mean, the fact of the matter is it's already happening.
Right.
So it's a matter of, like, what should we do? Should we not allow any players to have users on any of these accounts? Like Jason, any of your players. Like, what preventive measures could you do for any of the compLextiy guys in terms of this esports gambling?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it'd be tough. I mean, something John just said I agree with. I mean, I think that because of the low dollar amounts generally that we're talking about in esports, it would be a lot easier for somebody with money to come in and make a bunch of money off of getting somebody to roll over for $500, $300, whereas a professional baseball player is not going to roll over for $500. It's going to cost a lot more than that. So there's a lower barrier to entry for corruption to happen here. And like I said, if it was trackable, I know my players are mostly compensated well enough to where they wouldn't consider doing this, because it'd have to be worth more than $322 to risk their whole career on. But that's not the same for everybody, and there is, like I said, a lower barrier to.
But what if you?
There's always a number.
What
the
if
number
they
is
were
actually
on?
not even important.
What if they were
but
on
it is
betting sites though? I mean,
If they what?
So you're saying that you're not quite sure how you would react if you found out one of your guys, let's say there was a lot of gambling going on in Call of Duty, and you found out that a couple of the teammates from your team were gambling on this website on their own game, on the very game that they play in. Do you think that you would have a problem with that?
Absolutely. I wouldn't have a problem with them gambling in general on their game, but on the game that they're playing in, I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even, as an admin, we don't even allow our admins to play in the tournaments that we run, even if they say, well, I'll step away as an admin from this event.
If they're betting on themselves like big to win, then I don't know. Maybe that's hard to say. But if I found out they were betting against themselves, well, that would be a big issue. So it's probably just
It's
easier.
a slippery slope, man.
The problem is, like, once you get into that grey area, like, for example, you could say, I mean, like, I could be a player and argue, well, look, we knew we were going to get fucked in that game, so I put a massive bet on us to lose, softens the blow. And you're like, yeah, great, right? But, how the FA works over here, that's the Football Association for people who call it soccer, is basically they've got a very strict rule about it. And if a player gambles in any capacity, in any way to relate to football at any level, you're going to be, punished for that. Because, even though you can, they don't even allow betting on games they cannot directly influence. Because we've seen players on 10 grand a week, 20 grand a week, 30 grand a week involved in match fixing scandals, betting on the number of throw-ins that happen in a game and then kicking the ball out with 5 minutes to go and make happen. This is absolutely true. This is what was going on at Southampton. Look it up. Francis Benali and Bruce Grobbelaar and those guys from back in the day at the Southampton Football Club. This is the sort of shit that was going on for these huge Asian, gambling syndicates that came in and were literally giving them so much capital that the return was worth it. But ultimately, if you can't stop somebody that's already making a great living out of a sport, effectively corrupting the outcome of that sport, eSports has got no chance of keeping it clean. Yeah. And I'd love gambling to come in. I'd love gambling to give it the esports the shot in the arm, more money, more prestige, more legitimacy. But we'd really need some sort of ombudsman or like hovering supreme body to monitor what was going on. We couldn't even trust the organizations. Like, I know you, Jason, you're a man of integrity, and I've got no doubt that if you caught players betting on to lose, you would absolutely fuck them and kick them from the organization. However, there's always going to be that manager that's going to go, that's a fucking great idea, boys. I mean, we're rubbish anyway.
God.
We could earn more from losing than we could from winning, and that means I can pick up that LOL team I've always wanted, and and blah blah blah. So, let's not pretend there aren't people out there who esports for them is just a way to cream off a bit of cash, and they don't believe in the purer things.
I will stand by the fact that I said that gambling is good, and I mean, not good, but it's not bad. But I agree with you guys. I think we are far too immature as an industry to have it in any sort of official capacity.
But we're again, like there are these websites here and there already. So I think we need to start doing something about it.
And they've been popping up for years.
Exactly what needs to happen. You just need to start structuring something, something that handles gambling, and then let ourselves kind of grow into it a little bit more, because we're definitely going to go through bumps. There's going to be other instances of this happening, especially if we start to condone it and start to like make it something that everyone can get involved in, instead of kind of like these obscure websites where you find a place to gamble in esports. Once we do start to put some actual structure in kind of managing it or governing it, then maybe it will, maybe our industry will kind of grow into it. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, well, guys, we're gonna take a quick break here, and Jason's gonna have to get going here, but it was a pleasure having you on, Jason. This was last minute. For those of you that didn't realize, or were watching last week, I think we announced that we're gonna have a guy from StatDrive here. That kind of fell through last minute, and Jason kind of jumped in here to rescue us, and it was great timing too, just given that compLextiy did so well this weekend. So big thanks, buddy, for doing it.
Appreciate you having me on anytime. It was fun.
It's awesome. And you want to do any shout outs before you leave?
I'll just shout out to Sound Blaster. Lost my Q-pad.
Q-pad right there.
Right there, yeah. Elite Motherboards, Newegg, all of our partners. Just thanks for being with us, and thanks to the community for supporting us. It's been a great ride, and look forward to keeping it going.
All right, good stuff.
With the CSGO team.
With a CSGO team.
team.
Just for
we'll
Richard.
be looking out for that.